Beer, wine, spirits, fashion, luxury, rocket ships, dinosaurs. All things that will never go out of style, which is why you need Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. With Drizzly, you can shop a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits from stores near you, then get them delivered to your door. Skip the store run, stick to the catwalk. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations.
Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
Well, shopping for a car?
Yep, Carvana made financing a car as smooth as can be.
Oh, yeah?
I got pre-qualified instantly and had real terms personalized just for me.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
Well, I got to browse thousands of car options on Carvana, all within my budget.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
It does. I actually wanted a car that seemed out of my range, but I was able to add a cosigner and found my dream car.
It doesn't get much...
Oh, it gets smoother. It's getting delivered tomorrow.
Visit Carvana.com or download the app to get pre-qualified today.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. We have a really exciting show to get to. For the first time, we're actually going to be joined by a member of the Orioles organization, as Spenser Watkins, a right-handed pitcher who recently signed a minor league contract with the Orioles, will be joining us later on. In addition, we're going to discuss some of the minor league signings and waiver claims that have taken place over this offseason that we have not had a chance to address on previous shows. But first, as a reminder, we're brought to you by Mercer Floor and Home Carpet One. Mercer is a third-generation family business that was established in 1959 and is located on Main Street in beautiful historic downtown Westminster, Maryland. For all your flooring needs, think Mercer. One quick personnel note before we get into tonight's show is that we have had some changes here at Baltimore Sports and Life Radio. Bob Harkins, who did a wonderful job as co-host of The Warehouse with Matt Corey and Chris Stoner, is moving on. We wish Bob the best. We enjoyed his contributions immensely. But our friend Dr. Stephen Loftus will now be joining that show as co-host starting tomorrow night. So be sure to listen to him, Matt Corey, and Chris Stoner over at The Warehouse as part of Baltimore Sports and Life Radio. And I know that we'll probably have Stephen on again when the draft gets closer, as we did last summer. For tonight's show, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to focus on some of the waiver claims and minor league signings that we have not discussed on previous shows. And before we get into specific players, Nick, just kind of general thoughts on the group, at least from what you've seen?
I think it's a pretty underrated group, to be totally honest. And we're going to, like the first guy we're going to talk about here in a moment. But I think for me, a lot of these signings kind of go unnoticed, or you see people on Twitter say, oh, another Orioles signing, there's another Michael Elias type move. And, I get that not everybody is hardcore minor league fans like us. Like, we're going to be at the ballparks watching these guys, and we're going to be excited to watch a lot of these, minor league signings and waiver claims. But, when you think about it, if you're an organization that wants to compete and you want to build your prospects, you need guys like this in your system. You need these, 30, 31-year-old, guys who kind of bounce around from system to system. Yeah, they may not be exciting signings, but you're going to be able to plug them into Norfolk or Bowie's pitching staff. And you're going to be able to give, especially in 2021, you're going to be able to give, Michael Baumann and your Zach Lothars and Alexander Wells, all these guys, you're going to be able to give them more rest. You got to think about that. You need innings behind them. You need reliable arms with these young top prospects to help them out as well, because 2021 is going to be a rough year, I think, for a lot of people, especially pitchers. You're going to see a lot of injuries. And so depth is going to be key this year, especially at the pitching position. So I'm excited to talk about some of these guys and see what they can do for us next year.
Yeah, it really seems like a decent crop of, take a flyer on a guy who they see potential as, bring him in for spring training, see what they've got, if they can tweak anything to give them that extra boost, which seemed to work out pretty good in the past couple of years since Michael Elias came through. And yeah, I think it's a solid, minor league free agent. It's never a home run. You'll be lucky if you get one or two guys who make any contribution to your major league team, but just because that doesn't happen doesn't mean they're not useful and they don't play a role in the organization. So yeah, I like what they've done. Maybe they'll still come up with another one or two before spring training kicks off next week.
Yeah, certainly a possibility we see more additions. So what we did was we each picked one player that we wanted to highlight, and the three of us are going to discuss. And I'm going to start it off with Ashton Goudeau, a right-handed pitcher who has had kind of a roundabout offseason. He was selected off waivers by the Pirates from the Colorado Rockies in November. And then a little less, about 2 weeks later, the Orioles claimed him off waivers from the Pirates. Goudeau at first doesn't look like the type of player to really be notable. He made his major league debut last year at age 27, did not put up very good numbers over 4 appearances out of the bullpen for the Rockies, but his minor league numbers really suggested there's more than what meets the eye, starting with the fact that he had an excellent season at AA Hartford in 2019, posting a strikeout rate close to 11 with a walk rate down around 1.4. He has consistently been a good ground ball pitcher throughout his career. And if you want to look at a number there, it was at about 44% at Hartford in 2019. And one website that has been high on Goudeau is Fangraphs. He actually ranked 13th in the Rockies farm system prior to the 2019 season, prior to the 2020 season. And it sounds like Eric Longenhagen is still pretty high on him based on some things he's written. So Goudeau looks like he could be some interesting bullpen depth as sort of a ground ball pitcher that could work multiple innings. So this is a guy that I'm kind of intrigued to see what he can bring.
He's a pretty intriguing guy. 28 years old, but really took a step up in a nice little jump in 2019. Like you said, seemed like I was doing some reading. He dropped his slider, which wasn't really too effective for him, and he either added or focused on his curveball that really tunneled well with his fastball. And that's when he started seeing the improved statistics and success. He sits around 93 miles an hour. And yeah, I saw him as high as 13 on some prospect rankings. It's the Rockies. They don't have the deepest system, but still, for a guy approaching 30 years old, that's someone that could really play a decent role in a bullpen. At least, maybe not to start the year, but he could earn his way up if he continues to show that improvement.
Yeah, I think Godot's a real outlier here because, like you mentioned, he's a guy you're probably going to overlook if you're just kind of scouting the stat line and looking at who is this guy. All right, you look at his major league numbers last year with the Rockies, and you'll say, "I'm good. I'll move on." But he's probably just a late bloomer guy. Like you said, every national outlet I think was pretty high on him. Baseball America as well, and Fangraphs both had him in like their top 20, top 25 prospect list. Which, like you mentioned, the Rocky system isn't very good. But this is a waiver claim for Mike Elias and the Orioles. So. And he fits this new Mike Elias mold, the 6'6", tall, powerful righty. I think Eric Longenhagen did note that he was genuinely curious why the Rockies didn't give him more looks. I think Eric Longenhagen seems to be a really big fan of his. which opens my eyes. And then also, if you look at his 2019, he went to the Arizona Fall League. So he's older, again, at the Arizona Fall League for sure, but 13 innings, 4 hits, no runs, no walks, and 18 strikeouts. You're still facing elite prospect competition. So, yeah, he might have been a bit older, but I think you still got to know what you're doing on the mound to have that kind of success. And I found something interesting that I noted right after they signed him. The Rockies SB Nation website, purplerow.com, did their kind of player review series where they went over every single player that appeared at the major league level last year. And when they did a piece on Godot, they noted that he was sent to the alternate site and recalled 3 different times last year. So he's up and down all over the place. And in every single game he pitched, the Rockies lost by at least 6 runs. So like, I'm not even looking at his 2020 numbers, and just say that he's been a highly regarded arm for the last few years, and he fits this new Mike Elias mold. And if anything, he's a long relief option out of the bullpen next year. And I'm curious to see what he can do. And now that he's not with this, sorry excuse for a team like the Rockies, and now you're at a real organization that knows how to develop pitchers in the Baltimore system.
And he escaped the Pirates too, so good for him.
The thing that really intrigues me about Godot is that I think regardless of where he pitches, if he's in the majors or he's at Norfolk, he's going to have a pretty good middle infield behind him, because you're looking at Yolmer Sanchez and Freddie Galvis at the major league level most likely. And as we've noted on this show a few times, the middle infielders at Norfolk look like they're going to be pretty good no matter what combination you set up. And now you've added Demai Jones, previously the Angels, to that mix. So he might be a guy that if he can stick to that formula of just generating a lot of ground balls, either is in the major leagues and surprises you with what he does, or is in Norfolk doing well and is one of the first to be promoted when the Orioles need bullpen help.
And even if his peak is just a pretty valuable, solid, long reliever, maybe a guy that can give you a couple innings to extend that gap between the starter and your back end of your bullpen, he's going to be cost controlled in his prime. So it's valuable.
Yeah. And usually with these guys, you might see he gets good strikeouts across his career. Kind of like the next guy we're going to talk about, a lot of strikeouts, but it's walks. Walks are a big issue, but Godot's got excellent walk numbers throughout his whole career. So no, he doesn't walk guys, and he gets ground balls. So it's interesting. It's definitely, for a waiver claim, like you said, cost the Orioles nothing. So there's real potential for some upside here.
Yeah, Nick, about the next pitcher who you have marked down here on an outline, is somebody you want to bring up in Connor Green.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Green, a former top 100 prospect. Actually, Baseball Prospectus had him at number 100 exactly in 2016. He's 26 years old now. He's kind of been on this literally a wild ride for him. He's walked 343 hitters and 701 minor league innings, which comes out to about 4.5 walks per game, which isn't great. It's kind of ugly numbers. But you've also seen the home run rate kind of skyrocket as you reach the upper levels of the minor leagues. But when you look at the scouting reports on him, the guy has a 70 grade fastball on Fangraphs that I think touched 100 miles an hour in 2019. Reports on him coming out of the draft in college, he was throwing in like the upper 80s. So he's added about 10 miles an hour or so to his fastball in these few years in the major leagues or in professional baseball. In 2018, that fastball had a 55 grade. So he's definitely improving, and national evaluators, the scouts like what they see out of him. They like his stuff. It doesn't seem like it's ever been an issue with his stuff. It's just that control. Just some other highlights, like in 2018, MLB Pipeline put him as the potential breakout prospect for the St. Louis Cardinals when he was with their organization. So we're talking about someone who can throw gas out of the bullpen. He's been mostly a starter, but if he's someone who has plus secondary pitches, like scouting reports say, and that blazing fastball, I'm curious to see if you stick him in the bullpen, what can he do in short outings? And maybe that helps with that walk issue. They fixed Tanner Scott last year, so you got a righty version here in Connor Green, maybe.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to bring up. I was going to say plus fastball with command issues and an improving breaking ball. Who does that sound like? Right-handed version of Tanner Scott. So maybe it will take a year or two, but I feel like if the Orioles can just sprinkle their pixie dust on this guy, maybe he can eventually be something valuable for us. He was the number 4 prospect for the Blue Jays in 2016, and maybe he can regain that prospect status because he's still relatively young for a pitcher, just 26. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I think his age is kind of on his side here, and not to mention that, in 2019 it was kind of up and down for him. I'm looking at his numbers out of the bullpen at AAA Omaha. 4.11 ERA, which is not bad, but also a 9.4 walk per 9 innings. So that kind of underscores where the control has been an issue for him, even though that's over a limited sample size. If the Orioles can figure out the control problems, this might turn out to be one of the better pickups of the offseason because the guy throws so hard. And Nick, you mentioned he's been a top 100 prospect before, and he was also once part of a trade package for the Blue Jays to pick up Randall Grichuk. So this just tells you this is somebody that has a good pedigree as a prospect. This has not really clicked yet. So I'm kind of hopeful that, if the Orioles can figure out his control issues, even if it means an extended stint in the minor leagues this year, which is probably going to require that, he could be a good pickup.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you start to build that depth, and when you look at like AAA, a lot of these guys are probably going to end up in AAA that we're talking about today. But we've talked about how that rotation is probably going to be pretty stacked. So you're looking at guys who, if the Orioles keep them as starters, they're probably going to be like 6th guy in the rotation to help extend those starters and that workload this year. Or they're going to be guys who come in and work, maybe the beginning of the year. I'm curious to see, if they go with, Zach Lowthers or Michael Bauman's, maybe go your first 3 starts, only 3 innings or so. And then you bring in a Godot and Connor Green to throw another 3 innings behind them to help increase these guys' workloads. But, I mean, you got a plus fastball here, and Green, all the prospect pedigree in the world. Let's see what happens. Like I said, I mean, you keep going back to like a Tommy Malone, and I know that's probably just this crazy outlier, but the Orioles have done wonders with a lot of these minor league pitchers. So see what we can do with these guys.
And it would be nice to get the last laugh on the Blue Jays with Randall Grichuk if we turn Connor Green into a back-end reliever. That would be nice.
True.
That would be nice. I still feel like there's a little bit of a rivalry between the Orioles and the Blue Jays, even if both teams have kind of faded into obscurity, although Toronto is on its way out of obscurity now, but it's actually already out. But still would be fun to see that rivalry reignited here in the near future. So our next player is one that I know Bob wants to bring up, and it's another guy with an interesting prospect pedigree and a former first-rounder, and Nick Sufo, the catcher.
Yeah, it's just I joked last week when Connor was on that this is going to be our long-term backup catcher for Adley Rutschman, and I don't think it's that far-fetched that could possibly be the case. He's still only 25 years old, former first-round draft pick, like you said. He's noted for his strong defense and catchers. He's never really hit much in the minor leagues, but catchers' offense tends to develop a little bit later than other prospects. And I mean, what more do you really need for a backup catcher is someone with good defense and a chance to develop maybe a hit here and there. So he can't do much worse than Austin Wynns on the 40-man roster. And obviously, Chance Sisco and Pedro Severino, as strong offensively as they were last year, at least for most of the season, defensively, they were not it. And I don't think you want an offense first, defense shaky backup catcher for Adley Rutschman. So that's my case for him. But there's still some potential there. I like when you make a minor league signing that's not just a 30-year-old who could, pitch 10 innings out of relief for your team, but this is a guy that actually could stick around a little bit.
Yeah, Pedro Severino could be on the way out. Chance Sisco could even be on the way out if the Orioles maybe can get more out of him. And I think Sufo is a guy that can step up in that role because it's definitely not going to be Austin Wynns. I think Connor made a good point on our last show about when you see guys like who the Orioles used in front of Austin Wynns, your was it Taylor Davis and other guys on the 40-man roster. But Sufo could be a guy you maybe see on the taxi squad a lot this year with a good spring training. The power, he's a left-handed hitting power catcher too. And it's like plus raw power that hasn't really turned into game power yet. But so we'll see. Like you mentioned, he's still young. He also has 3 minor league options left, according to Fangraphs. So, I mean, that's somebody that the Orioles could move up and down if they need to. And it's the arm. They give him a 70 grade arm on these scouting reports. just outside of Tampa Bay's top 30 prospect list in 2019, which is one of the best farm systems in baseball over the last few years. So how high would he be in other teams' organizations? And his whole minor league numbers, I mean, he's throwing out 45% of all base stealers in the minor leagues, which is a phenomenal rate. And if you look at ZiPS, his ZiPS projections, they actually kind of like him, like a half a WAR player. It's all defense, but they say 85 games, 25 extra base hits, I think pushing double-digit home runs, left-handed power hitter at Camden Yards. He could find a few out there. But like I said, he's only 25. He's got options. So I think there's value there. We'll see what he can do with the Orioles. But yeah, I do like this guy sticking around for a few years here.
All right, I'm going to put you guys on the spot with a Nick Sufo trivia question. In September of 2018, in a game between the Orioles and the Rays at Tropicana Field, Nick Sufo hit his first major league home run. Which Oriole surrendered that home run, or then Oriole? I'll give you a hint there.
I know I saw somebody post this online.
Yeah, I would be guessing completely, but I will say Darren O'Day.
2018.
Nope.
2018 home run. I'm gonna say Bundy.
Yeah, it was Dylan Bundy.
Nice.
Nah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was a three-run homer in the second inning. 3-run homer in the second inning of a game that the Orioles went on to lose by a total of 14-2, and Blake Snell struck out 9 over 5 1/3 innings pitched. So typical 2018 Orioles baseball right there. But back to Sufo for a minute. I agree with you guys. This is someone who, again, age is on his side. 25 is relatively young for a player in his position that has major league time. And he's someone who has still only had 50 plate appearances at the major league level. So you have to wonder if there's some potential offensively that's not been tapped into yet. We know the defense is really good. Right now, I think with Severino and Cisco on the active roster, it's going to be hard for Sufo to make it to Baltimore out of the gate. But I think if he can go to Norfolk, do what he does defensively and has done throughout his whole career defensively, and show a little bit more with the bat, we could see him in the major leagues pretty quickly. And, depending on what he shows, I don't think the idea of him being Adley Rutschman's backup catcher in 2022 should be ruled out at all, just because what he can do defensively. And if he has that experience with the pitchers that will hopefully be in the major leagues in 2022 after time at Norfolk this year, that's all the more reason to have him stick around. So this is a signing that I definitely think has some upside.
Yeah, definitely.
I also saw he had Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say I saw he had positive marks with pitch framing, which obviously that's good unless they go to the robo umps. So another plus in his favor.
As I say, when you're reading about him, there's a lot of good articles about some of the changes he's made and progression he's made, and just highlighting his arm behind the plate. But I'm more curious. He committed to University of South Carolina when he was 14 years old. So if that doesn't tell you, I mean, apparently his dad played there. So of course that had a lot to do with it. But there's also a kid down the street at the high school, right down the road from me, who just committed to the University of South Carolina, and he's 14 and hadn't even played JV baseball yet. So I think looking into Nick Sufo, actually, I have more questions about South Carolina baseball program. But I mean, yeah, the guy's got pedigree there. I think he was drafted one pick ahead of Hunter Harvey too, if I'm not mistaken. If I looked that up correctly, I think Hunter Harvey was picked right after him. So might see them as a battery mate at Camden Yards next year.
The final out of the 2024 World Series, Hunter Harvey to Nick Sufo.
Yeah, strikeout. So that would definitely be something to hope for. So if you listened to our show last week when we had Connor Newcomb of Locked On Orioles on, you know that we talked about Wade LeBlanc and Felix Hernandez extensively. There are 2 other minor league signings that the Orioles made recently. Bob, though, does have a list of the players that the Orioles have picked up, which he's going to run down for us.
Yeah, you had Fernando Abad, left-handed pitcher, obviously veteran, 35 years old. I think he was with San Francisco last year. You have Claudio Custodio, a 30-year-old right-handed relief pitcher who was a Yankees prospect as a middle infielder at one point and is now throwing in the upper 90s. Seth Mahias, Breen, a third baseman, 29 years old. Spenser Watkins, right-handed pitcher, 28, which we'll hear from him in a little bit. Connor Wade, a 29-year-old right-handed pitcher. Dustin Knight, a 30-year-old back flipper. And, of course, we brought back Tom Eshelman, 26 years old, 86-mile-an-hour fastball. Any comments on these guys?
Chances of Fernando Abad makes the team. I mean, because I'm just throwing it out there because he's a guy that's had a lot of major league time. He's 35. He's been on some decent teams in the past too. Not to mention he's left-handed. So it wouldn't shock me if he ended up sneaking his way on the opening day roster, even though the Orioles have a lot of bullpen depth.
Yeah, I did notice an interesting thing about him. In 2019, he really went over 50% with his sinker usage, whereas the year before he had a nice even split between his 4 pitches. So I don't know if that's something that is going to be successful or not, but he had a pretty decent year in 2019. So I will say he'll probably start in the minor leagues at AAA, but I'm sure he has an opt-out clause somewhere by May. So if he's going to be up, he'll probably be up early in the season.
Yeah, like I said, you're going to need so many pitchers this year, especially bullpen arms. I'm sure he makes his debut with the Orioles at some point this year. Knight is interesting just because he's the back flipper. I want to see that. Apparently he was in Richmond in 2018, so that's like right down the road for me. And I'm mad I didn't get to see him pitch, but the numbers are pretty good with Dustin Knight. But he's 30 years old now, so we'll see what he's got. Again, just good depth. Seth Mejias-Breen, I was actually familiar with. He was with the Padres most recently. He does have some major league experience, got some pop in the bat. I think he plays most positions on the field. So I think that's one of those key depth kind of a Stevie Wilkerson type player, if you will, with power.
Chase Peterson.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good comp there for him. He's definitely someone who, if the Orioles need to bring him up in an emergency and play some games, if you see Seth Mejias-Breen in the starting lineup, he's worth a watch. He's worth a look for at least one game, see what can happen. But yeah, some interesting names.
Take some walks.
Yeah. So we'll see. He's an interesting one.
I'm interested in Custodio, this guy who kind of just fell off the map and then came back with a great fastball. Apparently he's a great guy, good character. And then I think the Blue Jays signed him off of some kind of amateur league where he was just blowing people away. So be a good story if he can make it to the majors.
And the background of him having been a position player at one point makes that all the more interesting. I'm always intrigued by guys who start out as position players because Custodio is, I'm looking this up right now, age 30. He first started playing in 2010 as a position player and hung around the Yankee system for a while, but didn't start pitching regularly until 2015. So I'm curious to see if there's a little bit of development left despite his age.
Yep, there's a few of them. And go back to the Rule 5 draft that Ignacio Feliz that the Orioles took from the Padres in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft, another former infielder. So see what these guys got, see what they can do. I know Custodio was the guy highlighted by the Cespedes barbecue guys. So he's got some fanfare already coming to the Orioles.
And Connor Wade, just to mention him, he had decent numbers throughout the minor leagues. Doesn't get many Ks, but he also doesn't walk anybody. He's a fastball, changeup guy. So plenty of those to go around.
Well, now it's time to introduce our guest for this episode of On the Verge. It is Spenser Watkins, right-handed pitcher who was recently signed by the Orioles. Prior to joining the Orioles organization, he was a member of the Detroit Tigers farm system, pitching with them from 2014 through the 2019 season. In 2019, he appeared at 3 different levels, including High A Lakeland, Double A Erie, and Triple A Toledo. Spenser is now joining us here. Thank you, Spenser. And how are you doing?
Great. I really appreciate you guys reaching out and having me on the show. Happy to be here.
So certainly this has been a different off season. How have you been preparing for 2021?
Different for sure. We pretty much tried to design it as a season, I guess, and take, when we were taken out of spring training in, what was that, March? to kind of treat that as, okay, when I got back and it was like stay ready concept, it was like, okay, where would I be at in 2019? Where was I at that point, or 2018? And just kind of continue to build on that kind of routine, because that's what we're creatures of habit, and routine is so important to us that was my goal, was just to kind of fill that void the best I could, whether it was, facing other professional guys out here in Arizona, which there's plenty of them, or, just continuing my bullpens, or, increasing my duration of bullpens and things like that. So just really tried to stay on the same routine I'd built in my last, 6 years prior.
So I know that there's quite a number of professional baseball players out in Arizona, as you mentioned. Who are some of the ones you've faced in your workouts?
So Jordan Cowan, he's with the Mariners. He actually is my assistant coach for the youth baseball team that we coach here in our off seasons. And so I faced him along with Sean Cashmere and Rio Ruiz. Actually, was a part of one of the groups that I got to face him. And then there's a couple other guys, a couple Latin guys with like the Padres here and there, and then a ton of pitchers. I mean, Tyler Erb is a guy that I ran into out here, old Orioles guy. But yeah, there's a ton of names and a ton of guys out here.
So the Orioles swing looking?
Great. He's looking fantastic. He's a big old dude, that's for sure. He's a great guy as well. He was, we got to talk a little bit. Really, really, really excited to play with him for sure.
Still got the cool hair?
Oh, of course. Looking good.
Awesome.
So have the Orioles given you details about when you're reporting to camp yet?
Yeah, so I spoke with Mr. Qualls, and he had given me a Sunday by 1 p.m. was when they wanted me reporting for, to begin the COVID protocol that they just released, start the testing and a little bit of quarantine, just to make sure everything's good there, and then get rolling with camp days.
Nice. So from your perspective, do you think, I know this is going to be different for everybody, but for you, do you think not having that 2020 season was kind of a bit of a blessing in a way? Like you got to reset, work on specific aspects of your game? Or do you think going into 2021, it's going to be difficult for you to get back out there on that routine and ready to compete for a major league roster spot in like a week?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think there's two sides to it, because you miss that piece of competitiveness, going out and competing day in, day out, that you're used to doing as a high profile athlete, in the upper levels of this game. But also, it was like you were saying, it was a great opportunity for me to really refine some things, and maybe some areas I was deficient in, I could really attack and take a good chunk of time to develop, whether it be mechanical or pitch design, things like that. So I think there's two sides to that, really, and there's definitely a positive and there's definitely a negative. I'm very intrigued to see. I feel great. I feel like I'm going into this camp, in my best shape and in the best position to win a spot right now. But I'm interested to see how that competitiveness, missing all of those innings per se, how that's going to kind of translate.
Anything in particular that you're looking forward to testing out in the spring training? See how it goes?
So a cutter has been in the works for me all I guess you could say COVID break. It was big going into spring training last year before everything went down. That was a big design for me, just to get something to work off my curveball, and I was really excited to show that, and didn't quite get a chance to show it in front of the brass. So I've been working on that still, and I'm excited to bring it to camp.
Nice. What during your free agency this offseason, what sold you on joining the Baltimore Orioles organization?
I think it was the personableness, I guess you could say. Mike Snyder reached out to me personally, and we actually had a phone call right that day that he had originally reached out, and just talking to him, it was really genuine. It wasn't like I felt like he was interested in me as a person and a player, not just kind of a filler, something like that. He was like, oh, we really like you, who you are as a player and a person. So I think that was a big piece of it that really attracted us to become an Oriole for sure.
Now, was it you that reached out to the O's, or did they reach out to you?
It was my agent was doing some work behind the scenes, kind of throughout the whole duration of all this. Doing what he does best and promoting myself. But yeah, Mike was the one who initiated the initial contact.
Nice.
So, as Orioles fans, you spent your entire career with the Tigers. Orioles fans, a lot of them probably aren't too familiar with who you are as a pitcher. So, if you could give us kind of like your self-scouting report, what's in your toolbox, and what do you think some of your biggest strengths are that you're going to bring to the mound for the Orioles?
Me as a pitcher, I'm a guy who is going to be there every fifth day. I eat innings. That's kind of been what I've stuck my pride on throughout my years with the Tigers. Is I've been an inning eater, whether it's been at AAA one week and single A the next week, kind of a thing. I was there to fill innings, and that was what I took pride in, and staying healthy throughout 140 to now potentially 160 game season. 62 game season, but I would call myself a horse, I guess you could say, that I'm in for the long haul. I go deep into games. Rarely do you see me come out of games early. I'm going to compete with what I have that day, no matter what, if it's my best, if it's my worst. And then my strengths as a pitcher is with my fastball. I like to ride my fastball up in the zone. You'll see a lot of elevated stuff, hopefully a lot of elevated strikeouts, and pitch the curveball, and then I'll show that cutter as well. So
yeah, that sounds like a mix the Orioles would like. Have the Orioles reached out to you to talk about what your role would be in the organization, starter, reliever, or any tweaks they can make, or is that more something that would happen once things get going in spring training?
They have reached out. I've spoken with Chris Holt. He had a good background on myself, that he's watched some tape and some videos. So he had a good plan for me, and kind of what he was wanting with me, and certain things here and there that we're gonna touch on in spring training, and just to kind of accent what my strengths are as a pitcher currently, and then obviously to add in the cutter as well. We'll piece all that together, and I think we have a good plan. And then with me, they're looking at me as a starter to come in and like I said, be a horse, come and fill innings and eat innings and have some success for sure. And whether it's at the big league level right away, or whether it's in Norfolk for a little bit until the big club needs me, or whatever that is, I'm ready.
Love it.
So Spencer, you have talked a lot about being an innings eater, and it seems like something you definitely take pride in. Do you think that coming off of the pandemic and getting back out in the field, what are sort of your expectations for how many innings you're going to throw initially? Do you think you're going to be able to go 5-6 innings, or might it be a little shorter than that?
Yeah, in my preparation, as I've done for the past 7 years that I've been a professional, I prepare myself to go into camp being ready to throw 2 innings. And then usually they work us up from there. So I'm going in ready to throw 2, probably ready to throw 3, but 2 is, I think, in where they're wanting us to be ready to go. And then those first few weeks we build up and work those up downs. And I'll be interesting to see for sure with kind of how, if guys miss certain innings that they need to to build each year, where they're going to put us in the start, because maybe they'll keep us at 3, maybe they'll keep us at 4 early on. They'll dictate that stuff in spring for sure. So we'll see. But I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to take on as many innings as they're wanting, as long as I'm ready.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned.
So you mentioned
being the innings eater guy. Go ahead, Zach.
So I wanted to get back, because you mentioned Chris Holt, who will be the Orioles pitching coach this year. This is someone that Orioles fans are trying to get to know more about. What have your conversations been like with him so far?
He's extremely prepared. I can tell you that. He had every bit of tape already in his mind that he has already watched on me. He had TrackMan data, stuff that I didn't even know. He had it prepared and ready for me on the first phone call we had. So he's an extremely prepared guy. He's got an incredible plan. He's someone he's a leader. He's a guy that guys are going to want to follow and stick to and trust in what he's got going for us. So I'm excited to get to work for him as well as myself, because in just talking to the guy, it kind of lights a fire under you to get out there and show what you got and see what he can help you with.
as Orioles fans, especially Orioles fans who have followed the minor leagues for so long, and especially the major league rotation, that you talking about Chris Holt like that, I think lights a fire under us. I think a lot of Orioles fans that listen to the show are going to love that answer. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was fantastic to talk to. You know, it was very exciting, I guess is a good way to put it, to hear him and hear what he had already, you know, from A to Z. Really, he was top to bottom ready to go. So it was fantastic. I'm excited to get out there and work with him.
Nice. I know I've seen a couple other kind of the younger Orioles prospects who have come in and said like they didn't really buy into this whole like the analytical approach to pitching now. It's this real science. I mean, it's always kind of been a science, I guess, but just how much you can break a pitch down now with, you know, looking at tilt, spin axis, and all these fancy terms that you hear now. And a lot of guys saying like, you know, that wasn't for me. I just like to go out there and pitch, tell me what I got to do, and I'll go do it. And then you see a lot of other guys saying that when they joined the Orioles, they've enjoyed looking deeper into this information and seeing what it's done for their game. Kind of what's your experience with this? Is this something that, are you studying these charts and graphs and your TrackMan data, or are you kind of, where are you at with this new analytical approach?
So the Tigers, we didn't get too deep into that until really my last year with them, is when they started really getting advanced with the Rapsodo and everything, and making that information available to us. And there's a training facility out here that I throw at that has a Rapsodo and TrackMan and all that, so you can get all that data. For me, I love it for pitch design. You know, you can really assess the shape and things like that. You know, when you really get into like the horizontal break and stuff like that, okay, but I'm really focused on, you know, spin, direction, things like that. But for me, the real thing is the eye test. So like throwing against live hitters and just talking with the hitters, because that's really, you know, that is really for me what makes a pitch great, is the eye test, is what are these guys seeing, what are they not seeing, type of a thing. You know, and like when I faced Rio, after our at bat, I went and talked to them. We talked for 5 minutes about the at bat, just to see what he saw, certain things, or what I saw, just to pick each other's brain. I think that's really the most important thing for me as a pitcher in developing.
That's cool.
Yeah. Do you?
So from your time, go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
All right, I was just gonna steal one of your questions, Nick, because I like it so much. From your time in the Eastern and International League, were there any Orioles hitters who stood out to you when you were facing them?
Rylan Bannon, for sure. He was, nice. Man, dude, that is a hard guy to get out. So I'm glad I'm with him. He was tough. Who else? Mountcastle was tough as well.
That one checks out.
Another guy. Yeah. Hayes, of course. But who else? I'm trying to think. I always actually had pretty decent games against Bowie or Norfolk. I'm trying to think of a guy who really had my number. It would really be Rylan Bannon, for sure. Yeah, he was. So weird. I don't know. That's what I got for him. So I don't know.
Walk us through an at bat with against Rylan Bannon from your perspective. What makes him a tough out?
Oh, dude, I felt like he either knew everything that was coming, or he saw everything was coming, or he had something tipped that everything was coming. I mean, I just felt like he was on every single pitch I threw. There was never a moment where I was like, I set something up and I executed the pitch I needed it to be, and he either spat on it or fouled it off or hit it, you know, off the wall. It was pretty impressive to see. And I don't know if maybe he was just super hot that series, but it was more than one series. So, you know, coincidence? I think not. So he was always the toughest one. He was just pesky, man. And if it wasn't a hit, it was a long at bat. It was a you know, pitch count builder. So
if you can't beat him,
yeah, he was
him.
Tough for sure. Yeah, there we go. I'm glad.
With the Orioles,
I'm glad. Yeah, exactly. There we go.
That's awesome. We're all huge Rylan Bannon fans, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, man, he's a stud.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious to know, from your perspective, someone who started at the GCL level, you've worked your way all the way up to AAA. what's kind of that hardest level to go from point A to point B? Like, what's the hardest jump from your perspective to make? Was it, I think we hear a lot about like going from high A to double A is where you start to see a lot of minor leaguers kind of separate themselves, and that's the hardest jump. But is that true in your opinion, or?
I thought the jump from Double A to Triple A was the hardest. And that could have been the difference of the baseballs and things like that. But I thought just the quality of like the consistency of quality in the lineups was the biggest jump from Double A to Triple A. You know, because Double A you had a lot of young prospects that were really in there. In Triple A you had just from 1 through 9 someone who was either about to be established or has been established and has done it for a long time. And so I thought the biggest jump was from Double A to Triple A. But if you take out the Triple A majors side, everybody always says Triple A to majors is the biggest jump. But I would say, yeah, high A to Double A was a big jump for sure. Anywhere in that single A range I thought was pretty similar. But yeah, the high A to Double A was a bigger jump for sure.
Nice. You spent 7 years in the Tigers organization. You were a 30th round draft pick. You had to make your MLB debut. Hopefully it's with the Orioles. You got fans in us that are pulling for you for sure. Just going back to 2019, the Tigers had you at 3 different levels. You know, kind of from what keeps you motivated to go out there and keep pushing to achieve that Major League Baseball dream?
Oh man. Just a love for this game, I guess. I mean, it's truly something. It's hard to put into words. Really, it's something like, I guess, the best way I can put it is when I'm on a baseball field, it's like a separate place for me. It's like a separate world. It's like my world kind of a thing. And there's nothing I love more than being out there, besides my beautiful wife, of course, because she's sitting right there.
Yeah, like that's why you said
that. Yeah, it's there's something about baseball that is it's hard to put into words, and for me to be able to play it and have success, and along with being around incredible guys and that clubhouse atmosphere and competing and things like that, just. I guess just the love of the game for me is continuing to be able to play and be a role model. I coach a lot of kids when I'm home in the off season, and to be a role model for them and show anybody can do it, especially coming from, I was cut from my high school team, things like that. Like anybody can become what I am today. And, I think that's a lot of things that drive me. And then of course the incredible support I have from family, my wife, my parents, things like that. It's friends, it's incredible. All those things for sure.
Good answer.
What's the one thing that you wish fans knew understood more about the life of a minor leaguer and that grind of a minor leaguer?
The grind. I mean, the day in, day out is, it's, they're 12-hour days. Like, I mean, granted, yes, we're, that baseball is a slower sport, but we're at the field from 11, the stuff behind the scenes from 11 till 6 p.m. and before the 7 o'clock start, we've got all that stuff we got going on, whether it's training in the gym and things like that. I guess a lot of people don't realize, and from talking from families and parents, they don't realize how much else goes on. They think we just play a lot of games. It's the how much of a grind, and it truly is the preparation that goes into it. And they understand the travel. They don't understand the extent of the travel to go along with the continued preparation, and then the games happening right after the travel. So just really the grind is, I think, not misunderstood, but I don't think it's been exposed to the normal people who aren't in this game. And how crazy this life is, and how crazy awesome and fun it is, really.
Should get paid more to do it in the minors.
Agreed. You said it.
So we have some kind of rapid fire questions here for this interview, and I'm going to start with Nick. We've got a list of questions here. I'll let him start it off.
Yeah, so do you have any pregame rituals or traditions that you stick with?
Pre-game rituals or traditions? Yes. So I always wear all black, and I have socks that have flowers on them. That's what I wear
Nice.
every game day. Every day I'm pitching, it's all black, and then my flower socks.
Nice.
And yeah, it's just I've done it ever since pretty much rookie ball. I don't know why. I think it was one of the days it was like the only thing I had, and it's the same pair of socks too. They're washed, but it was like probably the only thing I had left in my travel bag. It was a black collared shirt and my black pants, and yeah, so I always wear all black and flower socks when I pitch.
How about any memorable heckler stories from your career?
I think I've been pretty lucky to not have too many hecklers. Wow, that's a good one. I really don't. I'm not fun when it comes to that, I guess.
How about
I haven't had too
when,
many people wear me out.
When your teammates were on the mound?
Oh, jeez. I don't have those either. I don't know why. I can't recall if there's been any funny or crazy hecklers. When we were in Brooklyn, that was the first time I really just heard just a bunch of nonsense coming out of people's mouths for no reason, just, random things. It had really nothing to do with the game, or just they were just talking to talk or whatever. But yeah, I can't really recall any. I don't have really any special hecklers or anything. Oh, actually, I do. So this was in Lakeland. This actually involves my wife, not me or anybody on the team. I was in Lakeland, and my wife was visiting, and she was my fiance at the time. I think, yeah, fiance. And she was sitting in like the third row, and there were people in the front row, or in the second row maybe. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Florida State League game, but there's no fans. There's like maybe 25 fans in these big spring training stadiums. And anyway, so there's a lady in front of her who's I guess was talking crap about me, or I walked a guy or whatever and was saying stuff. And so my wife ended up firing back at her with something, and respectfully firing back at her, and they got into a little heated little thing, and obviously the whole stadium could hear. I couldn't hear it, I was pitching, and then my manager called me, and Mike Rebella called me into the office after and was like, was that your wife going at, and it was like an older lady. He's like, that your wife going at an older lady in the stands? So yeah, that's I think that's the only one I got. But yeah, she's when I pitch, she's nervous as can be. So she said she told her to be kind.
Never know who's behind.
But
you made it sound like I fought this lady.
Yeah, she's very supportive of me.
That's awesome.
What's the best minor league stadium you've played in, home or road?
Best minor league stadium, Charlotte Knights. Charlotte Knights for sure. Not a great stadium to pitch in by any means. It is tiny. I think I gave up like 4 jacks in one game there, and it's wind blowing out, but it's absolutely gorgeous. Incredible stadium.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that. I'll go there one time.
Yeah, I never got to play in Hartford when I was in Erie, but I heard that one's really, really nice as well. But yeah, Charlotte Knights for sure.
Yes. If you could change one rule in baseball, what would it be?
Oh, one rule in baseball. That's a good one. I'd stick with that DH rule. Keep it the universal DH. I'm not a big fan of hitting. If we stay under 80, I'm good. But I'd rather not face 95. So, I would say universal DH.
Nice. I was gonna say, after you got signed and researching you and learning more about you, you didn't start pitching until you were like your senior year of high school, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you were a catcher, you were a hitter first. So there's no plans of if pitching doesn't work out with the Orioles, you're like going to be like Adley Rutschman's backup for us or anything like that?
Yeah, right. Defensively, for sure. That was my strength. I was always defensive first. But yeah, the bat never came around. So senior year, they were like, let's take that out of your hands and give you a ball. So yeah, so that's when it started. But yeah, I'm happy to hop in defensively for sure.
You know, a lot of free time on your hands during this pandemic, this whole year. Do you have any recommendations for movies, TV, or video games?
My wife and I watched, well, video games for sure, Warzone, and I'm not a video game guy at all. I bought a PlayStation just to play Warzone because my friends were like saying, actually Zach Houston with the Tigers, he got me onto it, and yeah, I've been playing a ton of that, and then nice. On like Netflix wise shows, we don't watch. We're both super busy. My wife works. She works for Square, the Square Online, the website design stuff. She does website support tech, and then I coach. I coach 2 different teams while I'm here, so we're always super busy. But we watched. Right now we're watching Firefly Lane, which is quite interesting. Not bad. Not bad. Not great.
Cool.
Not bad.
Have to check it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Vampire Diaries.
She said Vampire Diaries, but no.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Did you pick up, speaking of the pandemic life, did you pick up any new skills or hobbies? You know, the whole bread stuff, whatever that we were all supposed to learn during the pandemic. Did you pick up anything?
Any new hobbies?
Taking care of
That's a good question. We got a new dog. Yeah, we've got 2 dogs now, so that's kind of a hobby in itself, taking care of them. And we're in a townhome, so we don't have a backyard. So, having to take them in and out becomes a hobby for sure. But the new hobby definitely would be playing Warzone, because that was not a thing. I did not play video games before the pandemic for sure.
Take your PlayStation with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's coming with. Yeah, for sure. There's going to be plenty of downtime. Definitely. So it'll be FaceTime and Warzone for sure.
Nice. Following the Tigers system, I enjoy watching a lot of those prospects that system had. Who was the one Tigers pitching prospect you would never want to step in the batter's box against?
Matt Manning. That guy is electric. He's impressive, and I've been lucky enough to kind of be with him as he's gone up, through West Michigan to Erie, and he's an incredible guy first off, but an incredible teammate. But he's, as a pitcher, he's just electric, and I think he's got an incredible ceiling. Excuse me. He's just barely at the base of what he can accomplish right now, and he for sure. Casey Mize as well. He's impressive. I mean, good luck. But Matt Manning for sure. He's pretty incredible.
Right, so Spencer, I know you're on Twitter. Can you tell our listeners where they can give you a follow?
Yeah, at Spenser _Watkins, but with 0 vowels. Just SPNSR_WTKNS.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight, and we're really going to be pulling for you this year. Anything else you want to say to the Orioles fans?
I'm excited to be in O. Like I was saying, I felt the love right away when I spoke with Mike, and I've been feeling the love from you guys as well as the fan base, and I'm excited to show who I am and what I've built in the last 7 years, all leading up to this. So go O's. I'm excited to be here for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and for our listeners, continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. Visit BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for the latest stories there, and hop on the message board. We'll be back next week with a look at college baseball, as well as some Orioles spring training talk. But thank you to Spenser Watkins for joining us tonight, and for Nick Stevens and Bob Phelan, this is Zach Spedden. You're listening to On the Verge.